So today we're going to look at how you can control parameters on materials through your blueprints. So we have a BP chalice, which is just an actor, just a static mesh on it, and I've created a basic material. So if we open that, and say for instance we want to be able to control the color and the emissive sort of glow or intensity. So we'd probably create a color first, plug that in there, and the first way we'll give this a name. So we'll convert that to a parameter, call that color. The emissive, that's just we'll start off with a scalar, so we'll press S and we'll call that emissive, and then we will multiply this by this, create our emissive. And that will be our it'll appear sort of black to begin with. So how can we change the color on this? So if we go to our actor, so the first way that we can do it is through a dynamic material. So if we get our chalice and we say create dynamic material instance, our source material, well in this case we can just say get material, because we want to use the material that's already on there, and the element index will be 0 because there's only one material. And then from here we can then start changing the parameters. So we could say set vector parameter by value. That would be the color that we set in the material, the color name. The other is the scalar for the emissive. So here we can just change the color first of all. So say we want to change it to green. Now if we compile and play, so it goes from black and it is now green, which is the color that we set. So if we want to then change the emissive, again we can do the same thing. We can drag off from the dynamic material instance and this time say set scalar parameter value. We could maybe leave a little delay here so we can see the difference. This parameter value will be emissive, which is what we set it in the material, and then we can give it a value of say 10. So if we compile and then we play, so it's green and then it starts to glow. It gets an intensity with the emissive color. So that's one way that we can change the value of parameters on the material. A second way of doing so is by using material parameter collections. So if you right click, go down to material, and you look for material parameter collection. We call this MPC chalice. Now if you open that, you can create scalar and vector parameters here as well. So our vector parameter, again we can name it, give it a name, we'll just call that color. And our scalar parameter, again we can give it a name and we'll call that emissive. We'll save that, and if we go back to our original material, we can disconnect these two that we just used. And now to get access to that collection parameter, if you just right click, type in collection, you'll end up with collection parameter, and you can choose the right one here, so ours is MPC chalice. And from here you can just drop down and get access to those parameters that we created. So our color would be this, We can plug that into the base color. We can get access to another collection parameter value. Again, the same MPC chalice. This time we want the emissive value. Plug that in there, and we can multiply the two again. So the default value again should be black. We go back here, and if we try to do it using the material parameter collection instead. So the way that this works is right click, and if you type in set vector parameter value, so off material access to the vector parameter value, you can choose your collection. So ours is MPC chalice. From there you've got the drop down, so you can pick the parameter. We've only got one vector in our collection, so that will be the color there. And then you can try to make a make color, or is there a make linear color? They're both the same. And we can set it here, so we could maybe set it to being to blue. And again, if we want to set the scalar value, so we do a little delay again, we right click and we say set scalar parameter value, again rendering material this value. Choose our collection parameter, which is chalice. Parameter name this time will be emissive, because we only have one scalar value there. And again, we can maybe give it of 10. So now if we compile, it's black there, and if we do it, so now it goes blue, and then it starts to glow when the emissive value is set. So that's two ways that we are able to change the color and the intensity of the emissive through blueprints. So the third way that we can do this is by using custom primitive data. Now I did a previous video on this, which I'll try to link to, but if you go back to our chalice, and again if we disconnect these two, we take the two original ones that we created here. Now if you click on the color and you go to the details panel, if you come down here it will say use custom primitive data. So we tick on that. Now this will use the custom primitive data which is set on the object, and this will use the indexes from 0, 1, 2 and 3. If we want to set the emissive, again if we click on the emissive, go to custom primitive data, if this is using 0, 1, 2, 3, the next index will be index 4. So we'll access this via index 4. And again we can put that into the base color. We'll multiply that using the emissive value. That should also come through as a custom primitive data value. So we'll apply that, save it, go back to our chalice, or disconnect this. If we grab our chalice static mesh and then we drag off and we say set custom primitive data vector 4, again we can make a vector 4. So again we're using indexes 0, 1, 2 and 3. So this will be R, G, B and alpha. And say we want to make this red this time. So we'll start that at index 0. And we'll put in a little delay. we'll drag off, and this time we'll say set custom primitive data. We want scalar value this time. So set scalar parameter for custom primitive data. Actually, that should be, it's not scalar, it's set custom primitive data float. Custom primitive data float. I think it's this one. We'll put in 10 as the value, but the index that we set was index 4 in the material, because this will take 0, 1, 2 and 3, and the next one will come through as 4. So if we connect that, and we can test to see whether this works or not. So if we play, got blue, and then it, did I not set it as red? Which I did set it as blue there, isn't it? So we just do that as, so RGB, isn't it? So it should be 1. Though it did work, let's just do it the way we thought it should work. So it's red, and then it starts to glow when we set the emissive using the custom primitive data. So that's 3 different ways in which we can control parameters on the material using our blueprint. So we can either create a dynamic material instance, set the vector parameter values or the scalar parameter values on that dynamic instance, or we can use a material parameter collection, which is Chalice, and get access to the parameter that corresponds either to the vector or to the scalar. Or we can use custom primitive data on the Chalice, and based on the correct index we can set the vector values or the float values. Now these values that we set don't have to be sudden changes, they can all be animated using different techniques. I think in a previous video where we looked at how you could open and close a door, we went through 3 different ways that you could animate changes, and basically those same approaches are available here, whether you use a timeline or a level sequence, or also you can use the built-in actor sequence in the actual actor. So if we just have a quick look at how that might work. So if we go back to using the dynamic material instance approach, and if we turn off the use custom primitive data in the material, so we'll untick that, and on the emissive we will untick that as well. If we go to the viewport, and if we just add here an actor sequence, so actor sequence component, click on that, and on the cross here you can say open in tab. So now you end up with a sort of a level sequence type window, but this is built into the actual actor itself, even though it is an experimental class. But if you click on here, you can say, 1, you've got access to material parameter collections, so you could access that. 2, if you click on the Chalice itself, and then you get the Chalice static mesh. From here, if you click the plus track, so 1, you can gain access to the custom primitive data, which we also used, but you can also just get the default material directly. If you click on the plus here, now you have access to the color and the emissive. So if I put the color in there first, that would be the original color. So I just open that, the color would be black, and then maybe over 4 seconds I can then change the color to green. So if I just press 1 on the green and leave the others as 0, that should hopefully go to green. And it would animate like that to the green value. We don't need that one. We could also, as I said, add another parameter. We can add the emissive here as well. Put that to 0. Maybe that's 0 after 2 seconds, and then it will start to go up to 5 like we were using before. And just press the plus there. Move that across to the end. And if we compile that, save it, let's go back to our event graph, because we want to disconnect this and actually just call the actor sequence. So from the actor sequence we can say play sequence. So that should hopefully cause things to animate. Let's see. And there you see. Let's do that again. So it animates and then it starts to glow. So that's 3 different ways in which you can change the values directly, or you can use different methods of animating those changes to create whatever effect you are looking for.